Hello everyone, my name is Econ Sean, I'm a Pokemon speedrunner, and this is my comprehensive menuing guide for Pokemon speedrunners who are looking to optimize their times, who are looking to take things to the next level in Pokemon Red Blue specifically. I should note this guide doesn't cover Yellow. Yellow has some small differences. I might cover that in a later tutorial. This is mainly for Red and Blue. For Pokemon speedrunning, there's so many small optimizations you can do, and so this guide is every single menuing optimization, all the buffering that you can do, i.e. pressing inputs so that they can input on the first possible frame. So this is every single little trick that I know that can optimize things, all packed into one series. So this guide is here to serve the purpose of being sort of beyond any category. I will be showcasing a couple of examples from my main category that I speedrun, which is any % glitchless. But this guide in principle extends to all those categories. One note about a caveat of this is that don't try and learn all these menuing techniques to implement into your run immediately. But one thing that you should do is that this guide should be a way to say, okay, you know, maybe there's some menu technique that I don't know, let's try and incorporate that into my next run, and let's continue to work on that until I get to the next thing, or, oh, maybe I didn't know this, maybe I can start to implement it. So take things step by step, don't try and implement it all at once. This guide's going to be split into 3 parts. The 3 parts are going to be, firstly, we're going to focus on item menuing. I think that item menuing is maybe less important than battle menuing, but I think item menuing is sort of the natural place to start. There is item menuing in the battle menu, so I'm going to start there. Then it's going to go into the battle menus for menus strictly inside battle. There's going to be a miscellaneous section of things that don't really fit compactly into any of these sections. And then finally, the third part of the series is going to focus purely on instant text and buffering during instant text, which kind of has its own set of rules. If you enjoy this content, please do like the video. Comment if there's something that I can improve or something that you want clarification with. I'd be happy to help you. And subscribe to the channel if you're interested in more content like this. I'd be happy to make more guides in the future, or maybe even a playthrough where I talk a little bit more about menuing to apply it to any % glitchless specifically. I have to shout out a couple of videos that inspired me to make this guide, because they're videos that showcase a lot of menuing techniques that I was happy about, but that I think are lacking in a couple places. So Alan has a video, which will be linked in the description below, on menuing guides, and that contains a lot of really nice things, but it's also lacking in a couple of places. So, but it's a great video, you should check it out. And PokeGuy has a video of him going through a run talking about menuing techniques. I also recommend that video too, as applications of menuing. This video, the purpose of it is more to give an overview of every single menuing technique that exists, to make people aware that they exist and to instruct people on how to do those things. So that's that. With that, here's section 1. We're going to talk about items. So right now, I'm going to go over some of the main concepts having to do with item menus. And so the main concept having to do with item menus is that whenever you open the item menu, whenever you're in this menu has a lot of very specific properties. One of those specific properties is that whenever you apply a button within this menu, so say I press, the down button, well, it's going to hold down. But if I press down and then a different button, it reapplies that down button. So if I press down and start, it reapplies my down press there, even though I only pressed down once. A more pertinent example is that if I press A going to the item menu, and then press another button, say right, it reapplies the item press. So by pressing buttons, so if I'm holding A here and I press down, it will reapply the A press in addition to doing the down press here. And you'll notice that went down to Helix Fossil, and I can use that. So whenever you're in this item menu, your presses get reapplied when you apply another button press. So if I press down and then press something else, it's going to reapply it here, right? So if I press down, I press something else, it's going to reapply. There's a couple of exceptions to this, but that's generally the concept that's going to be used when doing item menuing. In order to buffer slot 1, essentially, whenever you open the item menu, you just want to reapply your A press immediately. So if you press A and then you press another input immediately after, whatever is on the cursor is on, it's going to reapply. So a common example of this is if bike is on top, then you can immediately reapply the press by pressing a different button. It could be right, it could be left, it could be start. So here I'll press AB, it reapplies the A press. Here I'll press A left, it reapplies the A press. Whatever you press when you're holding A going into that item menu is going to reapply it. So it always reapplies that A press. This is a very, very useful buffer because you typically want to get on and off your bicycle. So this is one that's not very difficult. I highly recommend that people learn this as soon as possible. Slot 2 buffering is a little bit different. Slot 2 buffering, there's a couple ways to do this. One of the ways is that if you're scrolling down to an item menu, then if you hold down, remember that I said that inputs are reapplied. So if I hold down and press A, when I press A again, it reapplies that press. So let me do that again in maybe a little bit of slow motion. Let me reset the cursor. So if I press down here, and then I press A twice, it's gonna press A once again to the menu, and then reapply the A press like that. So you can do that to reapply it. The other way that you can use slot 2 in the menu is that, let me reset the cursor. The other way that you can use slot 2 is that if you're holding both down and A here, it just automatically goes to that slot 2 and does it. So if you're just sort of on this and you hold A and down, it will automatically go to slot 2 and then you can immediately use it. So there's a couple of ways of doing that. For slot 3 buffering, slot 3, we want to reapply a down press. So when we're in the item menu, we're going to press down once and then press A to reapply the down press, and it's going to apply the down press at the same time as the A press, and then that will buffer slot 3. So we can go item and then down A, and then it immediately hits slot 3, and then we can immediately use that item. You have to be a little careful when doing this. If you do it too fast, you will end up accidentally using slot 2. So this one, you want to make sure that you're actually in the item menu. So you'll see if I do it very fast, then it accidentally uses the second slot. You have to wait until that down press is there, and then you're pressing A is reapplying the down press to go to slot 3, and then you can use slot 3. Slot 3, very useful for using super repels in the speed run. So there's a lot of places where slot 3 is very nice. Also, one thing about slot 3 is that when you use one slot 3 buffer, you can go the other direction with it. So I did one slot 3 buffer down to do SS ticket, and then one slot 3 buffer up to do a bicycle. This is very useful if you're using a super repel. You can go down, do that buffer, and then you do another buffer going in the other direction to do that. Typically, doing these buffers one after another won't quite work. If you try and reapply the same button press using the same inputs, it tends to not work. So, but that's one instance where it can be useful to do 2 of these slot 3 inputs one after another, is using slot 3 and then getting on the bike. Slot 4 buffering is, and slot 4 buffering, this covers slot 4 and anything after slot 4 if you want to sort of buffer the presses for this. This isn't really a buffer per se, but it's kind of a fast way to select slot 4. So anytime you hold down, you can reapply the press by pressing buttons, right? So there I did down, left, start, right? So every time I do that, it reapplies the button press. And you'll notice that it's far slower than it's scrolling automatically, right? So if I hold down or up, it scrolls automatically. But so one thing that you can do to fast select slot 4, so here slot 4 is HM1, so if I wanted to select that very fast, I could press down and then reapply it 2 extra times in fast succession. So I could press down, left, start, I think is the way that I prefer doing this, but in principle you could do down, left, right. For me, I'm using a controller, so down, left, start works well. So you can do down, left, start, and then A press to get to slot 4 very fast. This can be very useful in any percent runs when you're trying to select repels in slot 4. Typically after a certain point, your repel is going to be in slot 4. But this is a very advanced technique. I don't recommend starting off learning this. This is just something that you want to learn later on if you're having a little bit of trouble getting to slot 4, because it's a little bit faster to apply it this way than to just press down 3 times. And as a note, if you are very fast with this, you can sort of reapply this over and over again to get down to the bottom. So notice there, I'm just reapplying it with alternating left and start there. But I think for me, I'm not very good at that. It's a lot slower than just holding up or down. So, but it's something that's good to know about. I think in theory, it's slightly faster. All right, so after using an item, you have a window of time where you can buffer an A press or a down A press. So suppose that I wanted to teach Horn Drill. So let's teach a move really quick. So let's teach Horn Drill. We're just going to teach it in slot 1. And we're going to try and buffer slot 2 after this. What we're going to do is that during this transition, we're just going to hold down an A, and it immediately buffers that slot 2 press. And then everything is fine and dandy on this. So we can do that. If we had held A instead, we could buffer slot 1. Suppose I teach... whatever. Let's just use a freshwater on a Pokemon here. Then if I press clear this, hold A, it's going to buffer the A press on the bicycle. As a note about all the buffers that I just mentioned, if you wanted to, say, buffer a select press to swap items, it works exactly the same way. So let's, for example, try to, at this fly menu, you typically want to swap slot 2. So let's swap slot 2 by, we're going to go down to item, we're going to hold our down button, I'm going to press A, and I'm going to very quickly press select to reapply the down press, and it's also going to press select. So we're going to press A, select, it goes down, and then we can immediately hold down to keep going down. So for select buffers, it works exactly the same way. Say that I wanted to buffer slot 3, I can press down select, select reapplies the down press, and then I can hold down to keep going down in the menu. Same for slot 1. Slot 1's kind of weird because you don't want to hold A. You can just hold select here, and then it reapplies. It just applies the select press as soon as you open the menu when you hold select in that transition. So it all works exactly the same way. Same thing for the triple input there. In Pokemon, there are a couple different ways to fast scroll through a menu. One trick in general is that if you're going into a menu and you know that you want to scroll it, holding down is a good way to do it. So notice that if I hold down here, it starts scrolling pretty immediately. Whereas if I had pressed down in the menu, so if I press down here, there's a little bit of delay there. So compare the two, right? So holding down, no delay. Down pressed in the menu, a little bit of delay between the first and the second one. There's another type of fast scrolling after you teach an item or after you use like a potion. There's a little bit of time, so say that I use a potion here. While it's ticking up, you can hold down, and holding down immediately gives you fast scroll. So if I had used a potion, so say I used a potion and I didn't hold down there and I just pressed down instead. So now let's press down and see what happens. Notice that there's a little tick of delay there between that. So holding down when the potion is ticking is good. Also, when you teach a move, as a general note, it typically for teaching a move, so say that I teach Horn Drill, what you're going to want to do is that you're going to want to hold down on the last ring. So you'll hear, so when I teach Horn Drill, there's going to be right here, after this and, there's going to be a ring that happens. So here, there's going to be a ring. I hold down, so my down is held. Now when I get into this menu, it's going to be back at the top, but I'll be fast scrolling through it. So if you hold down during that ring, that'll happen. If you don't hold down during that ring, if you try and press down after, you get a slow scroll. So typically, holding down in those places gets you a fast scroll, and that's something that is always good to have. You know you're going to be going down in the menu on the next menu. For closing a menu, remember that the way that these menus work is that whenever I press a button, if I press something different, it gets reapplied again. So suppose I just used a potion here. If I hold B, now my B button is held. If I press a direction, it reapplies the B press and closes this, right? So there, it reapplied the B press and closed my menu, right? So if I use an item, as long as I have B held, so I could use a repel, say, use B to clear this, and then it clears the menu. An even faster thing that you can do if you want to exit out of the menu, pressing the same button over and over again has lag. So like you'll notice that if I press A and then A to use a repel, it's slower than pressing AB, which is why we buffer it in the first place. So pressing AB here is faster to use this than if I just spammed A, right? It's a little bit faster by that. So if I use a repel, and then I want to close the menu, the quickest way to do it is to press B, reapply the B press to get out of the menu, and then press start immediately to close the menu, because pressing start is not applying the press. So if I apply this, I'm going to press B, a direction, and then start in quick succession. So B direction start to close the menu, and that's the quickest way to close the menu. The way that the shop menu works is very, very similar to the way that the item menu works. There are a couple of key differences. Notably, if I buy something in the shop menu, when I scroll all the way down, say that I buy like a paralyzed heal here. When I buy a paralyzed heal, the cursor doesn't... In the item menu, if you use an item and you have none of that item left, it jumps up all the way to the top, and if you use an item and you have some left, the cursor stays on the item. With the shop menu, the cursor will always bounce up to the top of wherever the menu is, so you'll notice that bounce up to ice heal here. So it's something that's worth keeping in mind. But the way the menu buffers and everything else work very similarly in the menu, right? So if I press buy and I press B, it reapplies the A press. I can then press A to buy a great ball here if I wanted to. If I press buy and then I press down here, down reapplies my A press. It also applies the down press. I can then go to slot 2 to buy super potions. Same for slot 3. If I press buy, I press down and press A, then I'll buy revives. This one is pretty annoying when if you're going into a shop menu and you want to select slot 2 and you accidentally press down and A, you might accidentally select slot 3. That's because of this slot 3 buffer is taking place. And then also you can reapply your presses with left or right or A if down is held, right? You notice that I'm reapplying that. And yeah, one other key difference is the way that fast scrolling works in the menu. When you go into the buy menu, if you hold down during the transition, it will fast scroll immediately. So you can immediately get a fast scroll. Notice that if I press down in the menu, there's that little bit of delay, but if I do it during that buy transition, which I messed up there, but let's do it during the buy transition, then it'll immediately scroll down. So that's something that is worth keeping in mind. Also, with closing, when you close it, start doesn't close the shop menu, B does. So the quickest way to close the shop menu, say that I bought a super repel here, then I could buy super repel, press B, and then hold a direction to reapply the B press here. Now notice that I'm in this menu is not an item menu, it doesn't apply the same way, so you have to press B over and over again to reapply that. But all of the buffering that we had for the item menu also works for the shop menu, just with that couple of small caveats there. So that covers our video on item menuing. There's still 2 more parts of this. One part where we will go through battle menuing and then some miscellaneous things, and another part where we'll go through instant text. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, comment if there's anything that you are confused about, or if there's anything you have questions about, or maybe anything that I missed, and do subscribe if you enjoy the content like this, because it allows me to see a signal of that people enjoy this type of content. So thank you all so much. I will see you next time.